So, another episode of Project Blue Book has rolled out. This one called War Games. And somewhat similar in the last one, in which I said it was a very good thing that they did, where the case was actually a hoax. And it didn't have anything to do with aliens or anything like that. There was still the elements that don't worry, there's aliens. Where the artifact Hynek found, and then he reveals it to his wife. And that episode ended where, he's going to be more open and honest with his wife and have her in the loop on this stuff. Well, that kind of is all undone by the next episode. Not by his fault. He had to go off on a case, but by the time the show ends, this episode, she's really upset. And at first I was like, well, they're just going to drop this idea that she would get more details of this and whatnot. But what happened was, of course, the neighbor's wife was murdered by the Russians, and so she's very scared about the neighbor's husband comes looking and says, "Hey, where's have you seen her?" And no, and all this. So she asks her new friend, who is of course a Russian spy and in love with her, it says, "Hey, could you teach me how to fire a gun?" And so they do. They go out in the woods and they fire the gun. And so now Mimi has a gun to feel safe with, but she still doesn't feel safe because, well, Cold War paranoia and all that. And so she has the gun, and then you hear their young son calling out to her and stuff. So I'm guessing they're going to set it up where the son's going to get a hold of the gun. And I want that thing out of the house. Interestingly enough, she wanted the alien artifact out of the house, and so he kept it in his car. And as a result of tonight's episode, he lost it. And the mysterious man in black retrieved it. So, which apparently, it seems as if that's what he wanted all along anyway. But basically the story here is they meet up with their Majestic 12 bosses. And they show them a found footage film. They were doing military exercises at this fort. And all of a sudden they get attacked by mysterious lights. And the men kind of go nuts. And all hell breaks loose. And so they come in to investigate, hey, what went wrong here? And they notice that the soldiers are all very irritable and aggressive towards one another and seem to be suffering from some sort of psychological breakdown. And ultimately, were the aliens doing this? And they're looking into it. No, the military did it to them. They were testing chemical weapons that could affect the psyche of enemy forces, and so they tested it on their own soldiers. So that's what's going on there. Meanwhile, there are two Majestic 12 bosses who are not so much in Majestic 12 as they're controlled by Majestic 12, I'm guessing. They didn't quite know what the hell this was. And they send Hynek and Quinn out there. And they discover that it was this test and they weren't kept in the loop. But as a result of doing this, they used one of the guys that I don't know if they actually said he was a pilot or not, but I know they had established that a lot of pilots who had experienced the Foo Fighters during the war were now somehow in tune with the aliens, and they could get signals, but it was driving them crazy. And this poor bastard, he was able to communicate and see things. Apparently he was seeing what Hynek had been up to, and that Hynek had the artifact. And I'm guessing somehow that signal was then sent to the man in black. And he came and got the artifact that was hidden away that the government had at one point, but then Hynek stole it and all this sort of thing. So, but the guy, it kind of brought up thoughts about the remote viewers and that sort of thing. I don't know if they'll get into that at some point. But it's kind of how the two generals were using him to do this, and the lights were blowing out and all this stuff, and his coffee was boiling as he was calling on the signals or tuning in the signals, what have you. And he goes a little nuts. He gets the artifact back, and it's almost as if he doesn't quite know what he's doing, and probably doesn't. He's more of a pawn. But Quinn had gone off with the soldiers as they believed they were under attack again, and they ride out into the woods and all this stuff, and then they almost kill Quinn because they're going nuts with what's been done to them. And Hynek shows up and basically saves Quinn. And then, the soldiers start shooting at them, and they run into the woods and hide. And then when they're riding back home after the soldiers leave, they encounter this man who can see, I forget his name, who can experience the signals. And he basically is sent there to get that artifact that's in Hynek's car. He gets it, and he fights off Quinn, and very easily it seems he's under the control of whatever this is. He's a far more formidable opponent than Quinn is. And eventually, and while in the woods, that's when Hynek discovers the materials that proves that it was a chemical attack on the soldiers and all that. So he presents that evidence to the two generals, and then they're all upset. I mean, Quinn's upset. You tested this on our own soldiers and all that, and they're like, well, we didn't know, And so there they are with that. And oh, well, I guess you're not the bad guys after all. Well, jury's still out on that one. So then their boss, who I'm assuming is working for Majestic 12, comes in and says, yeah, we're testing this weapon on our soldiers. And there's some ruffled feathers between them there. But then he was actually manipulating all of this to find out that they were making use of this signal man without permission. And so, meanwhile, signal man turns up dead. But going through experiencing the signals and trying to communicate with them is clearly incredibly stressful on the guy. And it's possible that it just burns people out. And so maybe that's what happened to him. So there you are. So now the artifact again is, the Men in Black comes in at the end and he finds it and walks away. But here within the story or the investigation that they're doing for this episode, again, was not alien. It was the government experimenting on their soldiers. We know this happened. Whether this actually happened, or psychochemicals or whatever. We know the LSD experiments happened and all that sort of thing, and the CIA did that. So, who knows, something like this could have happened. The show refers to an incident during the Korean War where soldiers saw strange lights and a craft that they fired upon couldn't recognize what it was, and that when they fired upon it, it didn't seem to damage it. And it was determined... They suspected it might have been a Soviet special craft that they didn't know anything about, but remained pretty much inconclusive. So these sort of things are part of the UFO lore, if you will, of incidents that happen in battles and this sort of thing involving military personnel. So that's not what they covered, but a similar scenario in their fictional story where it was, literally war games going on. But they were testing this experimental chemical on them, and probably totally destroyed the psyches of these poor soldiers, because they seemed pretty messed up. Another bit of evidence that was interesting is while Hynek and Quinn are investigating the scene of where this happened in the wooded area, a flock of birds are flying. They're flying all weird which way and all this stuff, and then all of a sudden they just start falling out of the sky. And so this is another symbol. All the chemicals are still out there, and it's affecting the birds like it did the men, but it ends up killing the birds. And so this is another thing about where, whenever people within conspiracy theories and UFOs and stuff and government experiments, when you see a bunch of dead animals all of a sudden, you think, what's going on? You're doing something, But so it all fits in rather nicely. The show's strongest suit is, of course, the atmospherics and mood that it has. And one of the things I thought they should do is stories that aren't totally aliens and all that. And they've done it twice now. And with still, we know there's aliens because of the artifact and all that. And the guy with the receiving signals and everything. Another good one. I still think the previous one was better, but this one was good with the moods working in it, and a lot of the distrust between one another plays into the paranoia of the times, and so on and so forth. So I was about ready to drop the series, but this is another good episode, so I guess for keeping me in, I'm in for the next one. So 5 out of 5 stars for War Games. and Project Blue Book. Now, this is the type of show that's like, if it was behind a paywall or something, would I recommend you sign up? No, I wouldn't. But thank God it's just on basic cable with history. Although I kind of wish it was on a different channel. But then the History Channel has long since abandoned the idea of just being pure history. But still, it's always going to be a bit of a stickler with me. But anyway, there you go. Project Blue Book, War Games. Thank you for watching and listening. Say, why don't you like and subscribe and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my podcast and to my many stores. That had plenty of goodies for you. What kind of goodies, Doug? Well, you get t-shirts, of course, mugs, stickers, and posters, all with my silly little artwork on them. And you can check out the Nailsin Theater at sellfy.com, which has my Poor Man Mystery Science Theater treatment of old public domain movies of horror and sci-fi type genres. So check that out and have yourself some fun. Yeah, why not? Treat yourself. Sure. Bye-bye.